Hello and welcome to the Luv Doc podcast with hosts Waldo Wachewski and Ophelia Bruschi.
Today, we have a unique and frankly explosive column from the Luv Doc. It starts with a classic workplace complaint, but then it immediately executes this, dramatic philosophical turn into identity, theology, and political controversy.
That's right. It starts off sounding pretty standard.
Totally. The dilemma comes from someone calling themselves currently silent sufferer. They work at a small marketing firm in Austin, about 80 people. And the focus is a coworker, nicknamed Mrs. Martyr. And apparently the silent suffering this person imposes on the whole company.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission, I guess, is to understand why the Luv Doc pivoted so aggressively, like away from simple management advice and into these really profound questions about the human need for pain.
Exactly. The Luv Doc really forces us to move beyond the office cubicle. We need to unpack the core psychological thesis here, that suffering doesn't just happen to people, but that for some, suffering is their identity. And we have to distill the actual management lesson buried in this firestorm of a response. And crucially, navigate the very charged political examples the Luv Doc uses to illustrate his point. We need to report those claims neutrally, just as part of the Luv Doc's structure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the immediate problem, the office drama, which I think probably everyone listening can recognize on some level.
Oh, definitely.
The sufferer paints a very clear profile of Mrs. Martyr. It's characterized by extreme presenteeism.
Yes.
She is the absolute paragon of physical presence. We were talking first person in the door every morning, last person to leave every night.
Standard.
She eats what the sufferer calls her working lunches, right there at her desk, never takes a break. And she's the first one to raise her hand for every optional seminar, every extra committee, any volunteer task the company offers. She's giving like 150% effort.
The performance of effort.
Yeah.
But the sufferer notices the contradiction,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Despite being the absolute epitome of effort, Mrs. Martyr is also the one who constantly and loudly complains, always stressed out, overworked at the breaking point. And she claims she never gets any help, creating this whole aura of necessary, heroic self-sacrifice around her. And here is the core professional betrayal, right?
Yeah.
The sufferer realizes that despite all the hours, despite the constant performance of being busy, Mrs. Martyr is actually, quote, horribly inefficient to the point of incompetence.
Wow. Okay.
And gets measurably less done than her colleagues. She is essentially working hard mainly to compensate for being bad at her job. But the only thing visible to management is the hard work part.
And that distinction effort completely divorced from measurable results. That's crucial here.
Yeah.
And the problem gets compounded because the manager, just observing the presenteeism, mistakes this inefficiency for actual dedication.
Oh, no.
The source states the manager praises Mrs. Martyr as a model employee, even suggests others should emulate her extra effort.
So the manager is rewarding a performance of suffering, not actual output.
Pretty much. Rewarding theatrical input over, actual results.
How common is that kind of blindness in, say, middle management, where maybe the metrics are often more qualitative than quantitative? Is that something you see a lot?
Oh, extremely common. Because visible effort is easy to see, right? Assessing true competence, that takes careful, nuanced management. It takes time.
Right.
So when a manager rewards the visible effort, they inadvertently create an incentive for everyone else to adopt similar, profitable inefficiency.
Profitable inefficiency. I like that.
Yeah. And the sufferer is caught in that classic bind. Do I risk my professional standing to tell the manager the truth about her incompetence? Or do I just stay silent?
Okay. And the moment the sufferer asks that question, the Luv Doc just abandons all pretense of being a standard HR guy.
Yeah, this is where it goes off the rails, or maybe onto the rails, depending on your view.
All right. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Luv Doc immediately pivots and asks this profound, really high-stakes question. If you take away a martyr's martyrdom, what does the martyr have left?
Boom. That's the core philosophical leap right there.
Yeah.
The Luv Doc is arguing that for this specific type of individual, the professional martyr, their suffering isn't just a byproduct of their job, it is their identity, their social status, their sense of worth, their relationship with management. It's all predicated on them being the most stressed, the most long-suffering employee in the room.
And to drive this point home, the Luv Doc uses, one of the most extreme analogies imaginable. It draws from theology.
It does. It's pretty bold.
It essentially says, look at the historical Jesus. If you remove the suffering, the beatings, the crown of thorns, that excruciating schlep down the Via Dolorosa, as the Luv Doc colorfully puts it, what remains is just a man, The suffering, the martyrdom, that's what granted the identity and the subsequent status.
Exactly. The Luv Doc suggests that without that struggle, that profound humiliation, the figure is reduced to what the Luv Doc calls a dilettante nepo baby.
Holy crap! You're psychotically obsessed with the Luv Doc, but can't think of a flashy gauche way to share your obsession with the world? Stop thinking and make a beeline for the Luv Doc's home sweet home on the interwebs, thepleasurecraft.com, where you can find a veritable treasure trove of sick merch that will make even your coolest friends super gel. Honestly, I don't know why you didn't already think of this yourself, but you're welcome. Have fun on the Pleasure Craft. It was made just for you. Let me spell it out for you one more time. www.thepleasurecraft.com.
Okay, dilettante nepo baby. Let's unpack that a bit.
Right. So for listeners who may be unfamiliar, nepo baby usually refers to someone who benefits from nepotism, inherited privilege.
Like the child of someone famous or powerful.
Precisely.
Right.
And the implication is that they lack the hard-earned experience and maybe the resilience gained through genuine, humbling struggle. The source uses this to argue that suffering isn't just painful, it's actually a necessary precondition for genuine competence and character.
Wow. Okay, that is a massive conceptual jump. Asserting suffering is essential for competence. It also raises this important question with huge implications outside of just faith, right? Mm-hmm. The Luv Doc claims that people who haven't suffered enough, who haven't faced humbling setbacks, they become insufferable. How does the Luv Doc immediately apply this idea to a broader societal context, to really hammer the point home?
Well, this is where the Luv Doc transitions to those highly controversial political examples, using this concept of coddled wealth and unchecked privilege to illustrate what happens, in his view, when an individual reaches adulthood without any form of painful, character-defining humility.
Okay, so the Luv Doc shifts gears hard here, using highly controversial political figures to argue his point that this lack of humbling struggle leads directly to arrogance and profound incompetence in leadership positions.
Right.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are reporting these claims impartially, strictly for the argument's structure. The Luv Doc designed this section to be provocative. We're not endorsing these views.
Absolutely. Neutral reporting is key here. The Luv Doc argues that contemporary U.S. political leadership provides a prime example of this. Insufferability driven by coddling. The claim is structural. The leader in question, Donnie Jiggles,
No, notice that.
was supposedly coddled by private school sycophants and groveling underlings his entire life. That's the direct quote.
Okay. And the Luv Doc continues, asserting that a life of such exceptional privilege, lacking any serious setbacks or, painful consequences for misbehavior, it basically seals a person's fate.
Yes, it suggests this individual was born and bred to be an insufferable windbag egomaniac. And it concludes that the system that elevates rich, coddled people is fundamentally broken because it mistakes confidence for competence.
That's a strong claim.
It is. And to escalate the stakes even further, the Luv Doc makes these extreme, almost satirical claims. It suggests this figure, referred to as Deplorable Don, was a deliberate choice by foreign operatives, specifically chosen from a pile of, quote, Epstein Island compromat piss tapes.
Wow, okay.
Chosen specifically to undo the very fabric of American society. And it adds that these agents are good at their jobs.
Okay, that is intense.
Extremely intense. And again, the purpose of these claims seems less about actual political commentary and more about offering the most vivid, shocking analogy possible for the high cost of unchecked privilege and a life entirely devoid of necessary humbling suffering. The Luv Doc is basically treating this political situation as the ultimate systemic consequence of enabling this insufferable nepo baby archetype it described earlier.
Right. So the structural argument is, if you are never humbled, you remain incompetent, regardless of your status or confidence.
Okay.
Let's try and bring this intense philosophical and political detour back to the Austin marketing office. Back to the sufferer's initial question about telling the manager the truth about Mrs. Martyr. What's the ultimate pragmatic takeaway here?
Well, after all that, the advice is overwhelmingly, almost sternly against intervention.
Really? After all that buildup?
Yep. The Luv Doc warns that if the sufferer exposes Mrs. Martyr, they might actually be denying the coworker the comforting constancy of her misery and suffering. That misery, in this specific dysfunctional workplace, is what anchors her status. It's her value proposition in a weird way.
Wait, so the Luv Doc is actually saying the manager might miss this succubus, this inefficient martyr figure, if she's exposed. Isn't that basically acknowledging the manager benefits somehow from having this dramatic martyr around?
Absolutely. That's exactly the implication. The Luv Doc argues the manager is invested in this performance of dedication. If the sufferer tries to take the cross away from the martyr, well, they might just succeed in putting themselves into the manager's crosshairs.
Ouch.
Yeah. The warning is very clear. Unless you are really into suffering yourself, don't try to crawl up on the cross with her.
Okay, so if the manager is actively rewarding the performance of suffering, then trying to expose the truth isn't just risky. It might be totally futile because the manager is effectively blind to efficiency, or just doesn't care about it as much as the drama.
It's exactly futile and dangerous.
So what can the sufferer do instead? What are the pragmatic alternatives suggested by this, frankly, pretty grim assessment?
Well, the core of the practical advice boils down to shifting perspective and managing the controllable factors. Yourself, basically.
Makes sense.
If the boss hasn't recognized the incompetence by now and is actively rewarding the inefficiency, the Luv Doc suggests that even a full-on detailed explanation probably won't change his mind.
He's bought in.
He's bought in. So the sufferer should focus on documenting their own work, clearly defining their own boundaries, and crucially, refusing to internalize the martyr's stress as their own problem. Let her own her stress. Detach. The ultimate advice is just managerial realism. Accept the situation for what it is, protect yourself.
Which brings us right back to that final, pretty famous line of advice from the column. Let bleeding martyrs bleed. That's the pragmatic conclusion for survival in what sounds like a broken system.
It really is. It's an acknowledgement that, look, some people seem to need their misery, or at least the performance of it, and attempting to fix them is often more detrimental to the person attempting the fix.
Yeah.
You can really only change your own response to the dysfunction, not the dysfunction itself, especially when that dysfunction is actively rewarded by leadership.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? We started with what seemed like a simple workplace dilemma about inefficiency, and we ended up dissecting a pretty wild philosophical argument about identity, the essential nature of suffering for character development, apparently, and the high cost of challenging the managerial status quo when inefficiency is somehow profitable.
What's really fascinating here, I think, is how the Luv Doc so tightly ties personal psychological identity, this professional need for martyrdom, to the failure of a business system. The martyr might be genuinely miserable or performing misery and definitely inefficient. But that very misery is key to maintaining her highly valued status in an organization that rewards visible input over actual quiet output.
It's like a perverse job perk, the suffering.
Exactly, a perverse job perk.
Okay, so the Luv Doc takeaway for you.
Yeah.
Next time you encounter a Mrs. Martyr type in your workplace, remember you might not just be dealing with an inefficient coworker. You could be dealing with someone whose entire sense of worth and professional status is actively tied to their performance of suffering. They are, in a sense, professionally invested in being stressed.
Which leads us to a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If the organizational culture, the one you are working in right now, actively rewards visible incompetence, or at least visible struggle over quiet competence, does that mean the only truly effective strategy for achieving status in that specific environment is to strategically adopt some form of profitable inefficiency yourself?
Ooh, that's a dangerous thought.
It is. Something to maybe ponder as you start your next work week.
To read the column that spawned this podcast, go to austinchronicle.com/columns/the Luv Doc. There are probably worse things to do with your time, right?